Hi everyone, I am Jennifer Imazeki. I am the Associate Chief Diversity Officer for faculty and staff in the Division of Diversity and Innovation. The division is working on creating several short videos that have tips and strategies to help faculty and staff navigate this transition to working remotely. And we'll also be hosting regular live sessions for follow-up discussion and conversation on those same topics. So I would encourage you to check out the DDI website. We're at diversity.sdsu.edu, and that's where we'll have a schedule of all of these upcoming sessions. This video is going to focus on tips and strategies for working from home. And I know that a lot of people are not used to working from home. And even if you are, you probably haven't been trying to do that while sharing your home office with your entire family. So we all are trying to figure out kind of how to navigate this new environment. The suggestions I have for you in this video fall into one of three categories. One is about your workspace and how important it is to have a specific space in your home designated for work activities. The second is having designated work time that is delineated from basically non-work family relaxation time. And then the third set of suggestions really have to do with how do you navigate working from home when you're sharing that space, maybe with a partner or roommates or with kids. And full disclosure, I don't have kids, but I do have a partner who has worked remotely for years. And as a faculty member, I also am generally working at home, or at least a lot more than at school. So when my now husband moved in with me, we had to figure out how are we going to share a not that big house with both of us here working all day long and both of us trying to stay productive and not want to kill each other. So one of the most important things that I think you can do is make sure that you have a space that you think of as your quote-unquote office. Now, if your house or apartment is pretty small, you might not have a whole separate office, but you might just have a desk in the corner of a room or a designated spot at the dining room table. For me, it's usually the bar counter between my kitchen and dining room. The main thing is to think about that place as your quote-unquote office. So when you sit down there, that's your work time. And just as important, when you leave it, you can think about leaving work behind. And it really doesn't need to be fancy. One of my roommates used, in graduate school, she used a TV tray. And that had the benefit also of being easy to put away when we needed the space. But even if it isn't fancy, you do want to think about whether you have good light. If it's not natural light, at least where is a lamp or some sort of artificial light going to come from? And if you're going to be on a lot of Zoom calls, you might want to think about what's behind you. I typically actually move to a different room when I'm going to be on a Zoom call where my video will be on, because my usual space, people are going to see a lot of my living room behind me, and it's kind of messy. You also want to think about ergonomics. You know, even if you're used to working at home a little bit in the evenings or weekends, if your space isn't ergonomic, that can quickly become a problem when you're there 24/7. So make sure your space is set up so your arms and your wrists are at the right height for your keyboard, that your feet can be flat on the floor. You might need to find a different chair or put a pillow under you. You might want to have a small stool under your feet, or even just a couple of books to make sure that your hips are level and help you maintain good posture. And we all know, whether you're at home or at school, sitting all day long isn't going to be good for you. So if there's a way that you can work standing for part of the day, that's even better. I did say your workspace doesn't need to be fancy, but the environment around us can make a big difference in our mental state, which I think is particularly important right now. So you might want to think about what you need to make that space comfortable and appealing for you, whether that's having a plant next to you or pictures or other mementos. The last thing I'll say about your workspace is, if your bedroom is the only place that you can find that sort of designated space, then by all means do that. If you have other options, though, I would certainly encourage you to use some other option, just because working in your bedroom then carries some potential of disrupting your sleep. And as somebody who suffers from insomnia, that's something I'm super aware of. On the other hand, sometimes, you got to do what you got to do. And if that's your only option, it's your only option. You also want to think about privacy needs. If you share space with other people, you might want to need a place where you can shut the door. I'll come back to that in a minute. In addition to having designated workspace, it's also important to have designated work time. That is, working from home gives us a lot of freedom, right? So if you have any tendencies toward procrastination or getting easily distracted, that freedom can actually be a double-edged sword, right? It's tempting to think that you can get some laundry done or wash some dishes in between meetings, but those sort of home activities can really end up distracting you from getting any real work done. So it's helpful to maintain an actual routine, to think about starting work at a particular time and ending work at a particular time, as well as taking breaks specifically to not work. Make sure that you're still taking time for lunch, to eat, to get up and stretch and move around a little bit, maybe to get some fresh air, walk around the block. Similarly, I think that mentally it can be really helpful to get ready for work in the mornings. Even if you're not going to be on a Zoom call, you want to get out of your PJs, put on your face. Don't necessarily have to wear something as formal as you might wear to school, but definitely think about kind of getting into work mode. Along with having some sort of routine, I find that having a detailed schedule, or at the very least a to-do list for each day, can help you stay focused. There are obviously tons of systems and apps out there. If you don't already have a system, easiest thing to do, set aside a few minutes at either the beginning or the end of the day and identify the 2 to 5 things that are really your top priority actions for the day, or for the next day if you're doing this in the evening, right? You can even schedule specific times into your calendar. If you use Google Calendar, Google Tasks is now built into our calendars, so you can assign a specific time and date in Google Tasks, and that task will show up in your calendar. And it also has the very satisfying side benefit of being able to check it off and see it disappear from your calendar. Having a routine and a schedule is particularly important if you have kids in the house. They need a routine and a schedule as well. We are creating a whole separate video on homeschooling. So if you're a parent, I would encourage you to check that one out. Speaking of kids, working from home poses a whole different level of challenges when you're sharing that home with other people. So my number one suggestion, communicate early and communicate often. If you haven't already, you really need to have a proactive conversation with the people in your house about what's happening, about why mom and dad are suddenly at home all the time and why the kids are out of school. Talk about what each of you need and what you each expect. This is where having a routine and a schedule can be super helpful. You want to make sure that everyone knows when you are working, so that they know not to disturb you. It can also be helpful to have some visible signal, especially of the times when you really don't want to be disturbed, like when you're on a conference call or a Zoom call. So for example, maybe the rule is that if mom has her headphones or a headset on, that is, no one should be trying to talk to you at that point, right? But if your headset is off, then it's okay to at least ask. One thing that my husband and I had to learn really early on was not to take things personally, right? If I try to ask him something and he's in the middle of working on a project or writing an email, he isn't going to be able to pay attention to me, and that has to be okay, right? Because he's working. The way that we navigate it is, first, we try to only interrupt each other if we really need to, if there's something that's time sensitive that can't wait until the end of the day. So maybe I am doing a load of laundry and I want to make sure that I've got everything that he wants to put in the laundry basket. Okay? The other thing is we start by asking, do you have a second? Or is now an okay time to talk? instead of just jumping in and asking what I want to ask or saying what I want to say. And then lastly, we allow each other to say, no, now is not a good time. And depending on the situation, we usually will also say something like, let me just finish this email, or I really need to finish this thought. Can you give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes? It's, in a lot of ways, it's not unlike when a colleague sticks their head in my office and says, do you have a sec? Can I ask you a question? I don't necessarily drop everything I'm doing to engage with that coworker right at that instant, right? And I wouldn't expect others to do that for me. Now with kids, it can be a little more challenging since depending on their ages, they may not understand that mom needs 5 minutes to finish an email. Setting a schedule for them and making sure that they have things to be working on themselves will help. Hopefully you also have a partner, and if need be, you can take turns in who is the main parent that's going to be available when your kids need that attention. And again, be sure that you're talking as a family about what's happening clearly and often. We do want to keep these videos short, so we've really only scratched the surface here. But do check the DDI website for the times and dates of our live virtual sessions if you want to hear more strategies from colleagues, or in particular to share what has been working for you. We also have some additional resources that are linked in the file for the slide deck, which is available on the website as well.